All right, everybody, welcome back to FreightWaves now on this Monday morning. It looks like we've got Marilyn Serber back, so let's welcome her in. Marilyn, it looks like you're headed somewhere. Are you in the Atlanta airport right now?
I am in the Atlanta airport. I am headed to Orlando for TMC.
Very cool. I will be in Orlando for the AUVSI conference a little bit later on in April, so exciting stuff there going on for conference times. And right now we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the retention world, kind of how things are going for the first 2 months of 2022 so far.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the good things and positive news is that we are starting to see application volumes kind of level out, which is good. This is on the recruiting side. So we have seen all of the traditional seasonality and kind of the things that we came to expect from a recruiting cycle have changed during COVID. And so we're hoping, right, fingers crossed, that this is a return maybe to some of that traditional seasonality and patterns that we're used to. So we are seeing application volumes kind of level out. And we also have really good news on the retention front, right? So turnover is kind of leveling off. It's staying low. We haven't seen anything spike back up. We're starting to see drivers stay a little bit longer at carriers, right? And that's really, Kaylee, when you think about what companies can do to move the needle on their specific retention efforts, it's all about like getting the driver to just stay a little bit longer, right? It's getting them to stay a little bit longer, stay on the truck. How much longer can you retain them? And I think a really important thing for carriers to do there is understand where they're losing drivers, right? We know in general, kind of overall turnover happens, in the first 6 months, drivers are more likely to turn over, but in the first 30, 60, 90 days, they're even more likely to turn over, right? But some carriers may have different points where they're losing drivers. And so it's really important to evaluate where you're losing your drivers and say, what do we do to address turnover at these different points?
And Carol, I think you raised a lot of great points there. Do you have any insights as to these drivers? Is there going to be more retention happening for those career drivers that have been in the industry for some time? Are you seeing a little bit more retention efforts or anything like that with those new drivers? Or do you approach these two types of drivers differently at all?
So I think we're seeing a lot of exciting retention efforts, I think, across the board for new drivers as well as those career drivers, which is exciting, right? As I think companies really more than ever value the driver that they have in their seat. And so, but what I think, if we think about what we talked about last month, which is the changing demographics in trucking and knowing that the people that we're hiring is different, so we have to recruit them a little bit differently, that stays with you into the retention stage, right? So I definitely think what you are going to see is people saying, okay, where are we losing drivers, and then who are we losing? And then what type of retention programs can you create to identify not only we talked about the different tenure marks, but also maybe different groups, right? If you know you're losing a ton of drivers in a certain area, what type of experience are they having in that, that maybe that part of the country that's causing the turnover there to be higher, right, than other states. The same thing could apply with, veterans, women, any type of demographic that you wanted to look at, but really slice and dice that turnover so that you know who you're losing and when you're losing them instead of taking a one-size-fits-all approach to retention. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that demographic switch has been really, really interesting to see through the last couple months and even the last almost 12 to 18 months as well, because I think that there's been not only a demographic shift of who's entering the entire trucking industry as a whole, but kind of an overall mindset switch in the general eyes of the public, which can really benefit our industry when it comes to recruiting. What do you think has been the one thing that has either the public perception has changed or that the industry themselves have changed to put forward that has changed the image that has been really successful in that recruiting and retention shift?
So I think, the pandemic, frankly, really really gave the public a chance to say, oh, wow, look at what these truck drivers do, and I think that a lot of overdue appreciation has come for the trucking industry just through the pandemic. And so, we've seen overwhelming support of drivers, right? And we're still seeing that, with the trucker convoy going through and people on bridges and really supporting that image. And so I think we've gotten a lot of good press since then, right? And now we just have to figure out how to maintain that, because drivers are always on the road delivering freight so that we can be at home, right, safe and warm in our beds, and that we can have the supplies that we need. And so I think we just need to keep that momentum up and keep it in front of in the public eye, right? But I also think one of the things that we are doing, we have all of this really cool technology, and I feel like we're starting to showcase, and we're making trucking sexy. We're starting to feature some of those different technologies and some of those different things that are going to attract, right, a different generation, a younger generation of drivers. And those are the things that they might specifically be looking for and frankly expecting from a job or a career, is some of the technology in trucking. I mean, we have some really cool technology. And so I think we're doing a better job of highlighting that and, talking about the different careers and the different options and just all the things you can do in trucking. It's not your, Smokey and the Bandit anymore.
Carolyn, I think you just read my mind, because I was going to be the next area that I go into is going to ask you around the technology and the innovations within trucking truly help propel maybe some new entrants into the market as candidates for being drivers, things like that, but also really extending maybe some of the retention here as well. When I think of, innovations in the workforce, a lot of folks probably thought that Microsoft Excel was going to replace them, but really it was something to help them and aid them. Do you see maybe potentially like something like, in-person autonomous vehicles, things like that, really being able to extend the retention time for some of these drivers as that kind of slowly but surely starts to get implemented throughout the country?
Yeah, for sure. I also think, the technology that we have that increases the communication and the ease of communication now between a driver and their family, right? And then also a driver and their company, their fleet manager. We have a lot of tools available now, and companies have become really smart in deploying those things to keep drivers. You can also, do some, video chatting, and there's just different things even before we get to autonomous vehicles, right? That you can use technology to engage drivers in a real meaningful way and extend their life cycle at your company. But most certainly, I think as we see technology continue to advance and we start, getting different models here, whether it's platooning or whatever that looks like, right? Or operators where we have, drivers operating a vehicle in a different way. I think that technology definitely increases our flexibility in the people that we can attract to the job and the hours that those people can work, and, all of the different things, and how the public is going to continue their evolution of how they look at this job is going to continue to change, right? As more and more technology, and as we start to see more of those things like autonomous vehicles, like platooning, like some of that stuff, being tested and deployed across the country.
Marilyn, before we let you go today, as you guys look forward into, now we're starting the spring season, that kind of turnover period of intense people leaving their job, new year, new job, new me, has kind of starting to tail off. What are your expectations as we move into really kind of this almost stagnant feeling season of like late spring to summer before we start to pick up on peak season here?
So that's a really interesting question, right? And so I think time is going to tell. I think we're all sitting here saying, what is 22 going to be like? Is it going to be more like 19, or is it going to be more like 21 or 20? And where is it going to be? But my prediction is, I think, we're going to see some things start to level off a little bit and, return to, a little bit of whatever this new normal is going to look like, right? I think 2020 is going to be, 2022 it's going to be a year that we establish a new benchmark, if you will, and kind of a new baseline to say, what are things going to look like moving forward?
All right, Marilyn, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Great to have you on as always. Safe travels, and we'll talk to you next month.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to toss it over to Anthony Smith right now. He's got that shipper update for you.